Puck's Given live episode, which is I'm not even sure if it's working. So if anyone does jump on, do let me know if you can hear me or not. Eventually we'll get this downloaded and we'll get it out as an episode as well, but it will be on YouTube exclusively for the time being. I hope that you're all okay. Thank you for checking this out if you have done. Well, some really big news that's come out then. The National Ice Hockey League's structure has kind of been decided upon, and this weekend they will be having their meeting to discuss everything that's going to be going on with regards to the league. So everything will be finalised. They've got a few points that they're going to be going over. The points for discussion are imports or non-British trained players, MBTP, as those was some were a little confused of the acronym, but yeah, that is imports basically. Roster sizes is also going to be up for discussion, as well as the league and cup formats, the challenge cups, promotion and relegation, which is an interesting one because that's not something that's been around for a little while. Rules of competition, playoffs, DOPS, obviously, and video reviews, which is also really interesting, as we did see a couple of instances last year where video reviews were used at certain rinks where videos taken live, so the officials actually have the opportunity to look at it. Again, if you are logged on and you can let me know if you can hear me or not, that'd be great. So first of all, the division has been decided, and the 8 teams that competed in it last year have returned, but they also have been joined by the Swindon Wildcats. Thank you very much, Inside Oxford 6 Stars, for letting me know you can hear me. Yes, the 8 teams that were there last year, they have returned, but we have also been joined by the Swindon Wildcats 2 side that were in NIHL 2 last year, had to drop out after the damage to the Link Centre by the flood. They have come back into the first division. And we've also been joined by Cardiff Fire, who have come up from NIHL 2 as well, making it a 10-team division, which 1 evens it up, 2 also gives us a little bit of jeopardy as we look towards playoffs. If 8 teams are going to be qualifying, obviously that is also going to be discussed at this agenda meeting. The Swindon Wildcats, as they've joined the party, we've got like an M4 derby now that's come and joined the league. They took the unusual step to release their entire roster all in one go. So the Wildcats announced former Slough goalkeeper Brett Massey alongside Ben Clark-Leach in the pipes. In D, Ben Nethersell, Ollie Stone, Will Harding, Ben Mason, George Howe, Josh Burnett, Cal Forshee and Jack Liddamore. In the forward area, Steve Osborne and Liam Coleman, both from Solent, headed over to Swindon. Dylan Lipsey, Alfie Druitt, Sammy Ray, Charlie Turner, Tom Ashmore, Hayden Lee, Jay Warren, Matt Lauday over from Oxford, Luca Kirk-Brown, Oscar Sagan, Jan Costal Jr. and Ethan Taylor back to Swindon from Oxford. A good competitive roster, and I think we'll look forward to seeing them ice in the Britain division. I think that's going to make it a really exciting division. And then Cardiff Fire, the other team that have joined the division, they've announced Ellis Shepherd has returned as their player coach. Thus far, no players, but player coach Ellis Shepherd is there, and they've linked up with the B42 Functional Fitness in Cardiff, keeping their players in tip-top condition, I'm sure. Last season's playoff champs then, the Chelmsford Chieftains, after retaining Lewis Clifford just before the end of the season, he signed on for the following year. They've also retained Jordan Lauday for 2 seasons, which, if you read between the lines, I think that might mean that Cliff is probably there for another season as well. And they've also retained Jay King, TJ Fillery, and yesterday confirmed they'd retained Ollie Baldock. So a good list of retentions at Chelmsford. Last season's League, Cup, Britain Cup and National champions, they're going through something of a rebuild after a few departures. They've also announced player coach Ben Painter has returned, along with Ziggy Beasley, Danny Milton, Sam Waller, James Warman, Jared Lane, Preston Toombs, Ryan Watt and Luke Brittle, with new additions to the Streatham roster of Roman Cathcart, Harvey Steed, Brendan Bard and Aidan Doughty, adding that National League experience to that roster. Which is, you know, when they regenerate, hockey moves in cycles. People have said it, for years. Obviously, Streatham have been quite dominant for the last few years. Now they're going to put this new roster together. Will that dominance continue? They're certainly putting the experience together to make it do that. Carl Lennon's Dynamos, they've also been really busy. They've announced 11 players thus far. New additions of Aaron Connolly, and Lewis Colvin returning from his spell with Leeds. So Colvin back to the Moes. The returning Moes are Dan Scott, Regan Neal, Tom Saw, Ruskin Springer Hughes, James Laming, Ollie Bronneman, Mad Stone, Harrison Lillis, and Joe Stevenson. They have all returned to the stables. MK Thunder have been busy with new head coach Will Fry. They've made 6 signings so far. James Cox, Charlie Conroy, the wind-up merchant Don Wealthall is back, Elliot Davis, plus Josh and Kieran Hickman. I know Kieran's a netminder coming over from roller hockey, so that'll be an interesting little one for MK Thunder. They've also announced Project Thunderstorm, which does sound incredibly interesting. There was a little thing last year about obviously the team MK Thunder kind of reformed as a charity rather than a sort of a sports team, with everything that Lauren's doing there. But they want to get the youth players through that Storm setup that's at Milton Keynes, and then they want to get them into the Thunder, and then can they get them onto the Lightning? So Project Thunderstorm has been announced, and I think that's a really, really exciting thing that's happening in Milton Keynes to get these young lads through to senior hockey. Solent Devils, they've been incredibly busy as well, getting their business done with the undeniable return of Mr. Solent. I think that was always happening. Alex Murray there as player coach on the South Coast. There's also been returns for Ryan Sutton, Aaron Taylor, Kane Russell, Dan Lackey, Callum Perella-Fox, Harry Cloutman, Rory Martin-Edwards and Connor Hutchison. Plus new names in Tom Banner, who spent some time at Oxford last year, and Jack Hops, who's left Streatham and gone to Solent. They've had, to be fair, the outgoings at Solent have been a little bit more of the interesting ones. Steve Osman, their top point scorer from last year. Liam Coleman, who's had 2 pretty successful years there after joining from Bristol. And Captain Alex Cole. Alex is going to be one of the guests quite early next season on Zero Pucks Given. He's gone to Slough, so we'll be chatting to Alex about his entire career. That's Anthony Russell, 3:30 on a Friday. What madness is this? This is the beauty of actually being like a field-based worker. Right? I work all over the country, but I get sort of a certain finite amount of stuff given to me. But I leave nice and early in the morning, so I like getting home nice and early. And then I've always got things planned. I'm a very, very busy guy. Well, I do as I'm told, basically. So this is my little time where I can get a little bit of time for myself. But 3:30 on a Friday, some of you may have finished work early, or some of you may be skiving off Friday afternoon, stick YouTube on the computer and jump on with our first live episode. So on to Slough Jets. They've been really busy after getting some early announcements in. Hello. My daughter's just arrived home. Hello, darling. I'm live on YouTube actually, so thank you for joining in. Yeah, Slough got their early announcements in when they announced a lot of their young players. Smiths had locked them in on 2-year contracts. So Jack Goodchild, the Moore brothers, and Jacob Minter as well, all locked in on 2-year contracts. They've also held retentions for Connor Redmond, Jacob Soper, Harry Hatfield, Timo Lindgren, which is a good list for them, as well as acquisitions of Brandon Miles, Ben Ely Newman, Alex Cole, and Nate Gregory as well. Although I'm not 100% sure that one's gone through. I'm sure we will see. But yeah, the Alex Cole one, when Alex comes on early September, we'll get the lowdown on everything that went down at Solent. He was obviously there a very long time, and find out all about his move up to Slough. They're looking like they're going to be really putting a force to be reckoned with next season. Obviously, they made the playoff semi-finals where they were beaten quite soundly last season, but that was all experience. I think for the young roster that they've got, they put a young roster together, and I think they'll really, really learn from that. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously, people were there. I was there. I was commentating on the live stream. It was a bit of a spanking. They started really well, but then they kind of mentally lost the game before they physically lost it, which I think is just experience for them. So when they get in that same position again, which I'm 100% sure they will, if not this year, certainly in the coming years, they will know how to deal with it a little bit better. And I think they're the ones that everyone's looking at to say, you know what, if Streatham aren't going to be as dominant as they were, it's probably going to be Slough that are going to be putting in the domination. On to Romford then. Obviously, we all know what's been going on with Romford as a club as a whole, going under some new ownership. With I know that Anthony Russell has sort of shared a little bit of details about some of the sort of company's house and the legalities that are going down with the sale of Romford. We've seen obviously from this announcement, Romford Buccaneers are part of the Britain division for next year, so they will be playing out of Romford. They've got a new junior coach there, of course, in Alan Lack. We're just waiting to hear whether that's alongside a playing role still at Chelmsford or perhaps somewhere else. But yeah, we wait with bated breath to hear that, especially Chelmsford fans sort of holding their breath. But no players announced yet at Romford. However, one incredible departure, which I had a little bit of an early sort of knowledge about. Brindley Caps has signed pro and gone to Coventry Blaze. He signed a 3-year contract at the Coventry Blaze as well. So their new coach, Kevin Moore, looks like he's going young and homegrown to try and improve the Blaze. The Elite League, something that kind of I don't really watch a great deal of. When I do watch it, I can kind of see that it flits really. It's almost between Sheffield, Belfast, Nottingham. It kind of goes in a triangle between them. I think the Blaze are really going to try and put their finger down this year and really, really put some points on the board and try and shock some people. And the roster that Kevin Moore's putting together is certainly looking like it's going to do that. And in all honesty, I think it's going to gain a little bit more sort of support. Maybe from this side of the country, people that are familiar with Brindley Caps, you're going to be keeping your eye on the Coventry Blaze this year. I know that I certainly am as well. I think just from actually friends' point of view, Coventry Blaze are my adopted Elite League team, just because I'm good friends with Scott Findlay from 303 on 3 podcast, who's a Blaze fan. So Blaze by association. But yeah, no players as yet for Romford. That deal for Caps does not have a two-way element in it, so he's not on a two-way with any side, Anthony. No, I thought that might be the case actually, that he might end up on a two-way, but in all honesty, I think that's just going to be a waste. I think Kevin's taken this punt where everyone's been speaking about this guy. This kid is 16, 17 years old. He's 6'3" on skates. He's quite slight, but he's strong. He's got all the confidence. I mean, I was speaking to some of the players last year that have been playing for years, and he's chirping them in the face off because the kid just knows how good he is. But when he came onto the 0 pucks given as well, speaks so well. He's such a well-rounded young man. He's got a really good family around him. Obviously, his sister Ellie Wakelin was playing with him at Romford as well. She's a GB international herself. So a good, grounded young man. I cannot wait to see him get started in the Elite League. And I honestly think he's going to take it by storm. And within 12 months, I think we see him up in the senior GB ranks, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. Just for the sport of hockey in general, as we're moving in towards these Olympic qualifiers, I think Brindley's got to have his eyes on that. He's got to have his eyes on those Olympics next year and say, you know what, I can make that. I can put the marker down and I can make that. So that's going to be really exciting to watch. Oxford City Stars. They've, to be fair, announced a raft of departures rather than any new players. But similar to kind of Streatham, actually, they're just going to be having a big rebuild. I think they lost all of their imports before the end of last season. Petr Cech didn't play a great deal of part in the later part of the season. Dylan Hullaby had gone home, I think, March time. Darcy Flanagan slightly before that. There's not been a great deal of confirmed details. Dean Burrell, when he was on with me as part of the junior coaching setup there, did reveal that Shane Moore's actually no longer the GM there. So that's something that they're going to be moving around. But they have announced their new head coach, which is former Blackhawks and Chieftains head coach Mark Saunders. So Mark has really got his work cut out now to try and put a roster together. I would imagine, I've spoken briefly with Mark since he signed. It's not to be, I don't think, competitive. It's just to be better than last year. There was a lot of good thoughts about Oxford last year. I predicted they'd finish fourth. Anthony joined me for a sort of a pre-season run through, and I thought they'd be right up there. I thought their import signings were really, really good. I thought the roster they put together was really, really classy. Everything they were doing on their social media was absolutely spot on. And unfortunately, it just didn't click. Simon Anderson was sort of an early casualty. Shannon Taylor then came in. They had moments. The night when they beat Streatham at home, I'm sure is a night that none of them are ever going to forget, players and fans alike. So they had moments. Next year it's going to be about getting solid. If they're going to take defeats, which everyone's going to take defeats, don't take heavy defeats. When you're in the good moments, make sure you work hard enough to try and get some points on the board, score some goals. That crowd that's been at Oxford over the last couple of years has just gone up and up and up and up. So they're just going to have to put a little bit of hockey together to try and keep that crowd in. And I then really think that they will start to get a little bit further forward. Obviously, having these more teams in the league as well now, there's really is places to fight for. So yeah, good luck to Mark. I've spoken briefly to Mark. great news for the podcast is we'll hopefully be getting a lot more exclusive Coach's Thoughts. So hopefully, of course, from Alex, Ben, Carl, Jason, Mark Saunders has also said he'll be doing that as well, which he did when he was at the Chieftains, which was brilliant for me. Hopefully from Lewis Clifford as well. And I'm waiting to touch base with Swindon and Cardiff as to see what we can get for the podcast from those clubs, because that really is a vital part for me. I absolutely love it when we get those exclusive Coach's Thoughts. It's such a good insight to the weekend of hockey. So the meeting then is due to discuss quite a few points. The import rule is the first one. I see a few people on Twitter were struggling with the acronym of NBTP, non-British trained players, or imports. So last year it was up to 3. You could have 3 imports in your roster. You could have as many on the ice at any one time as you wanted. I think you could actually have more than 3 in your roster, but only 3 dressed. I know Oxford had 4 towards the end of the year when they signed Jan Kostel Senior, but only 3 dressed at any one time. The rule, I think, I wouldn't mind it going back to 2 imports. I don't see that being a problem for a lot of the teams. Not many took up the full allocation of 3. It's having more than 1 on the ice at any one time. That I would really like to see stay. That's what hampered Chelmsford really. When Petr Cech was playing in goal for Chelmsford, it meant that Sasha Maltsev couldn't get a great deal of ice time. Wasn't an issue when he went to Oxford Cech. You could have Cech, Hullaby and Flanagan all on the ice at the same time. So that part of it I would like to see stay. As far as I'm aware, they are just D1 and D2. The National hasn't actually been mentioned in that post. I know it's been sort of queried for a little while that the National actually kind of want to break away and be on their own, whether they become sort of like an Elite League 2. But yeah, from the post that England Ice Hockey have taken out today, it only really seems to be about D1 and D2 in the north and in the south. So yeah, as far as we know, nothing being discussed for the NIHL, pardon me. The other thing they're going to be discussing is roster sizes. Yeah, as Anthony just confirms there, the National's doing its own thing. Roster sizes, then this may increase, it may even decrease slightly, perhaps down to 18 of what you can have dressed on the evenings. I've seen someone sort of poke a little bit of banter that they can already predict that MK are only going to be taking 8 to Cardiff on a Sunday evening, but it's as Anthony says there, yeah, a lot of moving parts in the National. But D1 and D2 are all getting together this weekend. But it's good to see that they've actually got around it quickly. You know, the Cardiff Canucks, that was kind of whispered a long time ago, but then we knew quite quickly they were going into the 2. The Swindon Wildcats rumour sort of came out 2-3 weeks ago, and then bam, it was confirmed really quickly that they were going to be joining the Britain division. And then obviously we kind of knew Cardiff Fire would be coming up, because you couldn't really have 2 Cardiff teams in the same league, playing out in that same arena. The other thing that's going to be being discussed is the League and the League Cup formats. Now, having 10 teams in the Britain division, I think is actually going to change the league format slightly. Last year with 8, every team played each other home and away twice. I can see that changing. We did have the Britain Cup last year. So we had the League Cup, which the first few fixtures in the league, so the first home and away fixtures were taken as the Britain Cup group stages, and then we got the semi-finals from there. I think that will continue the same. Possibly if they keep the Britain Cup, or the League Cup could become a separate entity and you will only play each other in the league home and away once. So you play each other twice in retrospect, home once, away once. That's how, for me, that's how I see it going, just purely because if you're going to go 10 teams and you're playing each other 4 times, it's a 36-game league season. If you're putting a cup in on top of that as well, plus playoffs, I think you're looking upwards of a 63 or 62 game season, which I just don't think is going to be viable, not for everyone, particularly teams that are not the first team playing out of their rink. That's going to be a struggle for them. I mean, for instance, now you've got 2 Cardiff teams in the NIHL conferences, plus the Cardiff Devils in the Elite League. It's going to be a lot of planning to try and get that in there. So yeah, when they do discuss that league structure, I can see it going back to just playing each other home and away, and then adding a cup in there as well, just to sort of pad the fixture out. There was a few weekends last weekend where teams had weekends off. There was I think Streatham had a sort of a period of 2 weeks off. Solent had a period of 3 weeks off at one point. We obviously missed a week with the tragedy of Adam Johnson, which that resulted in Solent and Slough playing on a Wednesday night, which I thought was really interesting. And it gave Solent something almost unprecedented at our level, which was a 6-point week when they beat Slough at the Hangar. 2 divisions play teams in a division twice, then a couple crossover. Oh, hello, Rod. Yeah, Rod's in from the States. So there's the other thing they've got on there as well, as we said earlier, promotion and relegation. That's really, really interesting. Something I think used to happen a little while ago at this level. It's not happened for a little while. Something I saw, obviously, we're not going to be taking teams from the Britain division and the Morley division up north and putting them into the national. That's just not going to happen. Just because the structure at the national is so different. People have gone on and on for years and years and years. Oh, why aren't Stretton playing in the National League? Because it would cost them in excess of £250,000 just to play in that league, and that's just not viable for teams at our level. That's why the Britain division, the level is improving, because so many players are coming from the National League and they're dropping into the Britain division purely because of the commitment factor. They want to be 100% committed, but they've got full-time jobs, they've got young families. They cannot commit to Sunday night away games in Scotland and the long travelling and whatnot. It's something that in the future I can perhaps, with the NIHL perhaps wanting to do its own thing, I can kind of maybe see it all being conferenced. So you might have National North, National South, and then you can start to look at having some promotion and relegation, because the travelling is just far too extensive. But the promotion relegation thing that I think is really interesting and could perhaps come in between 2 and 1 is what happens in the women's division. Now, the Elite League and the Division 1, the team that wins Division 1 and the team that finishes bottom of the Elite League, they have a playoff final between the two of them. Obviously, if the Elite League team win, they stay up. If the lower league team win, they go up, the Elite League team go down. That, I think, is incredibly exciting. I've managed to watch most of the women's playoffs via the live stream, commentated on fantastically by ZPG Ice Maidens host Adam Mackman. Yeah, that game was incredible. It was Swindon Top Cats who won the Division 1, and the Streatham Storm, who found themselves down the bottom of the Elite League after a clerical error resulted in a points deduction. So they found it's not happened for a while, but promotion to Div 1, Div 2 from both North and South could work. Promotion playoff could be one for a playoff weekend or as a series. Yeah, as I was saying, I think the idea that they do it in the women's, I think that would be absolutely brilliant to do that between 2 and 1. The only potential issue there is that you don't really want 2 teams from the same rink in the same league. That, I think, if for example, if you've got the Chelmsford Warriors, are they going to come up and play in the same league as the Chieftains, or the Mustangs as the Dynamos, Blackhawks as Redhawks, so on and so forth? Is that something that they want to avoid? Is it something they can get around? Maybe with having the similar amount of teams in both leagues, and you're only playing each other home and away once and twice rather than 4 times, it's something that could work. But it's just an interesting conversation and something else to add to playoff weekend. And because playoffs is also going to be, discussed there, because they did try something last year that I thought was incredibly successful, where they made the playoff final was Division 1 and Division 2, both in the North, both in the South. So South 1 and 2 were at Ali Pally, North were up at Ice Sheffield. I think they were fantastic weekends. It's a lot of hockey to get into one weekend, so not everyone's entirely, excited about a 10:30 a.m. face-off. But that is what it is. If you're going to put 4 games of hockey in on one day and you're going to ice cut after every period, there's only so many hours in the day. So that's got to be up for discussion. I'm not entirely sure what the clubs are really up for. A lot of the people I've spoken to, I spoke to them last year, the likes of Ben Painter, Connor Redmond, but sort of the top of the captains and the coaches of the players from the Britain division, they would prefer to go back to the series, where they will maybe have a home and away, maybe even a 3-game series, to make the playoffs. That, and I know the owners probably like that, because obviously having a playoff weekend, you're missing out on a full barn, so you're missing out on all of that income coming in. But yeah, the promotion relegation idea I think is really interesting, and it's something that's definitely worth discussing. And from a financial point of view, if it helps the game grow financially, then absolutely, I think we should be getting it done. So then rules of competition, they're going to be discussed. Obviously, might be different rules for how many games you have to play in the league to be playing in the playoffs, XYZ. I know we had a little thing with that with Harry Aitken at Streatham, because he'd not played many league games. That was all taken care of. I know from speaking to Dawn at playoff weekend that, you know, they did everything by the book. You know, they got a few little jabs online, but from what they did everything right, and Henry was able to play. Then playoffs going to be discussed. Then obviously DOPS, right? It was the bane of our life last year. There were so many issues. It all kicked off really with the Darcy Flanagan getting the 10-game ban for virtually nothing. 4,000 and counting, our friends over there, they did a fantastic, almost like an expose on what was going on with the DOPS. We were told that it was going to be reformed after England Ice Hockey formed from the English Ice Hockey Association, that DOPS was going to be changed, the way it was going to work was going to be changed. Hopefully there's going to be some ex-players, ex-officials involved so that they can try and get some of these decisions just a little bit better. Because as I've discussed on the podcast last season, you know, I witnessed incidents where I thought, Jesus, you know, looking at what bans have been given out, we could be getting a really, really heavy ban, you know, for that. And then it wasn't quite as heavy. So there was just no real consistency with it. And that, I think, is all anybody really wants to see, is just consistency. You know, if you're seeing the same incidents getting different lengths of bans, you want to know why. But I think everything that comes out from DOPS, it's just got to be uniformed. I think if we know before the season starts, look, this is this tier system that they had, it clearly didn't work. So they're going to have to be descriptive. They're going to have to take each incident on its own value and give a really detailed description, and perhaps a video if they can as well, of what they've decided to give as a ban or whatever. Because at the end of the day, these guys at our level, you know, we love going to watch it every week. They've got full-time jobs. You know, this is their hobby, their little part-timer, their little bit on the side, because they love playing. We don't want to see them banned, you know, for years and years and years. I mean, even going back to Yuri Hushka from the playoff final last year. You know, that finished the guy's career. 2-year ban. He may well come back. I think it'd be great to see Hushka back playing at this level. But you know, the guy lost his head for a split second. Is it really worth taking 2 years of playing hockey away from the guy? Not for me. Not for me. Do you know what I mean? I was there. I saw the incident. I saw the reaction afterwards. Quite rightly, I think, you know, if you're that gentleman in the crowd whose child was struck by the stick, you'd be understandably infuriated by it. It was all discussed afterwards. I think it was all dealt with. But yeah, we don't want to see these guys missing 10 games, 15 games, 20 games for you know, really, really bog standard stuff. You know, I remember we had the battle on the high road last year, the dark night between Invicta Dynamos and the Streatham Redhawks, where, you know, multiple bans, you know, a brawl at the end of the first period where, you know, some things that people have seen and weren't perhaps punished, and then there was some quite extensive punishments from things we hadn't seen. I know Josh Martin's ban was actually reduced, and he was back for the end of the season after serving 13 games, I think, of a 20 game, but it was reduced to 10 had he already served 13. Again, I've not seen the incident. I've spoken extensively to Chris Beale about it from Streatham. If you're saying 20 games, I'm expecting the guy literally to be pulling the geezer's pants down and spearing him from behind to get 20 games. So I'm not entirely sure that's what happened. So we'll again, we just want to see consistency, and we want to see me and Lewis Clifford discussed this towards the end of last season. It's, you know, young guys might still be playing under 18s and playing seniors. I think it was Eden Rolfe at Chelmsford got a ban playing for under 18s and couldn't play for the senior side for like 4 months because they don't have enough games at under 18s for him to complete that ban. That's where the sense has got to come into it. So what are we teaching our young kids if we're not letting them play hockey? That's not going to learn the lesson of doing these things that DOPS are standing on and saying, look, we don't want this in our game. You know what? There's a lot in the game that people might say they don't want in the game. The fighting, the physicality and whatnot. Look, it's part of the game. You're not going to get rid of it. You just got to manage it. So there's no point trying to eradicate a lot of this behaviour that these guys have grown up. A lot of the guys that are playing now, they've grown up with the game being like this. You can't eradicate it. You've just got to manage it. And you've got to manage it in a way that says, look, just calm down. Not, don't ever do that again. We're going to ban you for 10 games. Just manage it, because we don't want to see these guys banned. We want to see our players playing, and they want to be playing. You don't want it. At the end of the day, what you're going to do is you're going to take these guys and girls potentially that love playing this game, and they're going to do something where they're going to lose their head for a split second, and they're going to say, you know what, 20 games, you're done. And they're going to say, you know what, I don't play this game anymore. That's not going to get our sport go anywhere. So hopefully that will all change and that will all go. The last bit on the meeting agenda is video reviews. This is really interesting because I think it's something that we've got to look at. A lot of the teams now are videoing their games, but of a certain quality. Obviously, you have to video it for the purposes of the Department of Player Safety, so that the England Ice Hockey could do. I'll say as a devil's advocate, let me see if I can keep that message up, mate. Physicality is not what they're trying to eradicate. What they're trying to get rid of is people not taking responsibility for reckless behaviour. I absolutely agree with you, Anthony, on that. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. But it's the reckless behaviour when this is where it's such a funny one, because there are players that we saw last year that were guilty of it time and time again, and even in the same game, over and over again in one game, and not getting sufficient enough punishment for it. And then you'd see a player lose his mind for a split second and be punished for half a season. That's where I just think it needs to be all under this one umbrella of people that know the game. That's the really, really important bit. The people that are making these decisions need to know the game and understand the game better than has been from last year. From what I understand, DOPS last year was one man. And even if that one man is a former player or a former ref, or he's just a non-executive board member, nobody can do that job on their own. Absolutely nobody. And it's not a job I would want to do. But if it's a team effort, I'm sure they can get it right. And sort of moving in, I say, back to the video reviews, DOPS is going to be a massive part of that. I know there was issues last year with certain goals. I think at Invicta there was a couple of goals that were scored. One had gone sort of through the net, so they weren't entirely sure. Looked at a video, saw that it had gone between the pipes, so it was given. There was another one that actually hit both posts, didn't cross the line, and the goal was still given. So the videos reviews, they are quite important. But I do think it's really important that the teams are videoing the games to a decent quality, because that for me is the best way to grow it. The stuff that's been happening, from playoffs, looking into the men's and the women's, the live streaming was it was phenomenal. And through the Ticket Code platform, you can watch it on the actual television. I know that the South Finals, we had people down in Kent in pubs. It was being watched in pubs, which is incredible. And that's just the best way to grow it. Hopefully with Cardiff Fire coming in, using the rink in Cardiff, they should really have the facilities there to stream their live games. Same with Swindon, obviously being having a National League team. Hopefully they will be able to stream their home games as well. It's something I think all the clubs should look into. It's from what I actually witnessed of being part of the streaming team for the South Finals. You know what? I've been banging on about it for ages. It's not actually quite as easy as I thought it was. There's quite a lot to it. You're looking at possibly to have 3 minimum really good volunteers willing to sort of do it. But once you've got that, you've got the equipment and you've got the volunteers, then you've got no excuse. It's something I'm really, really hoping to try at least one game this year. Not entirely sure where as yet. I'd like to try and stream a game through the Zero Pucks Given YouTube channel with commentary, with a scoreboard, with the clock, just to sort of see if it can be done that easily. And then I can kind of say, you know what, we haven't really got an excuse. We can get our games out there, even if it's free to start with, until the product is right, and then you can start charging for it. But that's the best way to grow the game. Most of the rinks in Division 1, they're pretty full every week. Chelmsford's full every week, Invicta's full every week. Streatham get a massive crowd down on the high road there. Oxford's crowds are building. Romford are obviously a second team, but they still do quite well, getting a lot of crowds in there. I'm sure that Swindon and Cardiff will get good numbers, particularly as Swindon didn't have a second side last year after the damage to the link centre. But they kind of always have to appreciate that the people that want to come, they want to come every week, but they might just not be able to make it because of X, Y, or Z. If they've got the option to watch it live, it's not going to stop people coming to the rink. It's just for the people that can't make it. Everyone's still going to flood because the people that watch this sport absolutely love this sport. So yeah, well that's it. That's the agenda that they're going to be running through. it's really interesting times. It's been really great to see announcements from all the clubs. Most of them have been really good at like a little tease here and there, and then announcing their players, which has been fantastic to see. As a Chelmsford fan, it's great to see a few retentions. We're waiting to see a few more. It's just that sort of exciting time of year when you find out what's going on in the league that you love watching. So thank you everybody for logging on and sort of watching my first ever live episode. It's something I've got a little bit more comfortable with talking live now. I was a little bit sort of dubious before we did the commentary on the playoff finals. Hold on my chance. How does one become a match night commentator? I don't have a podcast or anything like that, but it's something I've wanted to give a go. Is that Chris? Is that you there? In all fairness, mate, it was something that I'd kind of said on the podcast that I wanted to do, and then the commentating team for the Britain finals last year was Joe Scutts from NIHL Stats and Chris Beale. Unfortunately, this year Joe Scutts couldn't do it, and Chris and Joe were nice enough to recommend to England Ice Hockey that I do it. So that was kind of how I fell into it. I think if you want to have a go at it, if your club, whoever they may be, if they're streaming their live games, ask them if you can have a go. What I did before I did mine was I practiced a little bit. So watching stuff on the telly and online and just sort of doing it to myself, because it's something that I actually found quite natural, was to watch the game and then my brain would kind of take what I was seeing and just compute it into words. So once you've kind of got that bit round, it does kind of flow. I must admit, I've watched them back. It was a little bit uncomfortable to start with, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. When I watch it back, I think it adds something. I think it does really add something to it. So yeah, Chris, if you want to give that a go, I'd suggest contacting your club and see if they want to do, a little live stream of their game, or even perhaps if they do record the game and they want to put it out as highlights, perhaps you can take the video and do a commentary over the video for them, to see if you want to get into it that way. But yeah, as I said on the episodes towards last season, it's something that I'd love to carry on doing. As I've said just a few minutes ago, I'm hoping that one of the clubs that I go and visit this year, I managed to get around virtually everywhere last year. I think it was just Slough and Oxford I didn't make it to. So I will be joining MK Thunder to, I think, just for the Chelmsford home, when they host Chelmsford, I'll be doing the commentary on their live stream for that. But I think you just got to ask the question, and put yourself out there a little bit. But yeah, it's really great fun, and especially if you enjoy talking about hockey, it should come quite naturally to you. So so once again, thank you all for logging on and watching the live episode. It'll be on the YouTube after we've done, but then I'll put it out as a podcast episode as well in the coming weeks, coming days. Those of you that have been following the ZPG Ice Maidens, which is part of the ZPG network, we have got a couple of podcasts. I've made a couple of little changes, because we're not going to have ZPG network podcasts covering the Britain division, because that's kind of just going to stay with what we're doing. But we will be having ZPG Buffalo, so we're going to get a little bit of a focus on that. But yeah, Ice Maidens, check it out. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.